so much for coming. Today is the 29th of Elul. Tomorrow is Rosh Hashana. Right? In the Jewish calendar, the day starts from the night before. So once it became dark out, we're already right now holding in the 29th, the last day of the year. And it's funny how we're having a shiur literally on the last day of the year. Today we will explore a little bit of the Tefillah, as we always do. We'll go a little bit into the explanation, but one thing I want to also do is, because in honor of Rosh Hashana, I want us to also go explore the Tefillah and what's the purpose and what should one have in mind during the Tefillah of Rosh Hashana. How should you approach Rosh Hashana? So let's start with a very interesting pasuk I want to read to you from Parashat Vayechi. We're about to finish the Torah. Right now, next Shabbat, we're going to read Ha'azinu. And after that is going to be Yom Kippur, so we're not reading any Torah. We're from the Parsha. And we're about to finish with Zot HaBeracha, Simchat Torah. And Be'ezrat Hashem, this time it should be only for the good. Victory to Am Yisrael, Be'ezrat Hashem. And this Shiur, by the way, this Shiur was dedicated for all the soldiers that are right now fighting in Lebanon, in Gaza, and Be'ezrat Hashem for the operation that will take place against all those who harm us, especially today. Be'ezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should take care of them for us, and we should hear very good news after Rosh Hashana and Shabbat. Be'ezrat Hashem. Just as right now we're holding in a war, we're in a state of war. Am Yisrael is in a state of war. So too every Jew is in a state of war when it comes to Tefillah. Tefillah is one of the biggest weapons, if not the biggest weapon that a Jew has. A person sometimes cannot learn Torah. A person doesn't know how to learn Torah. He wasn't given the keys. Not everyone gets the keys to learn and study the Torah. What are keys? Keys could be learning the alphabet. Not everyone knows the alphabet. Not everyone knows the punctuations. Not everyone knows Aramaic in order to access the Talmud. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have the Talmud translated, whether you want it for English, French, Farsi, whatever you want. You get it, Baruch Hashem. So today we have the keys. But not everyone throughout the generation had the key to access the Torah, the wealth of knowledge, and especially of the Zohar and the Kabbalah, which was completely in secret. How does a Jew then connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? If it's not Tefillah, what else does he have? It's prayer. When he knows that En lanu al mi leishayin ela Avinu shebashamayim, that there's no one else to rely on, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our Father in heaven, then he starts praying. Some people pray with their mind, some people pray with their words, and you don't need to know the alphabet. And because of that, we know that whenever Ze le'umat ze asa Elokim, says Shlomo HaMelech, very famous words, Ze le'umat ze asa Elokim, God created one against the other. There's always going to be a fight, and especially the fight is bigger where the potential is the greatest. And the biggest fight that we have as Jews, most probably in the spiritual world, is directed at our tefillah. The Satan, the Yetzer Hara, they send all the forces of whatever they're capable of. Now remember, Satan is something that is spiritual. So spiritually you're getting affected. But Yetzer Hara is something more natural. Meaning Yetzer Hara is another connotation that we call the side of us that just doesn't want to do all of this. It's either laziness, it's either greediness, it's either we want to make more money, we want to do this, we want to have a meeting, we feel like we can do more in our day if we don't pray, which happens to every one of us. If you think that it doesn't happen to the greatest of rabbis, you're 100% wrong. Every single person has a fight in order to pray. Prayer. To be able to go 120 years, Be'ezrat Hashem, in this world and say, I didn't have to fight once to make it to Minyan. I didn't have to fight once to pray Mincha, to pray Arvi, to pray Shacharit in the right time, is a lie. Everyone has a fight. Everyone has a fight, and sometimes it takes away from a person's, whatever it is, whatever a person thinks it takes away from him, It does take away. Says, yeah.
Satan is two different things.
So Yetzer Hara, Satan and Malach HaMavet, the Gemara says, very good question. The Gemara says it's the same thing. It's the same thing. But the rabbis explain that it's the same power, but there's a reason why there's different names. If they were really the same thing, then why are they the same name? Obviously, when the Gemara says it's the same thing, meaning it's part of this, there's a battle in this world, there's a war between good and evil. God created the world like this. The Yetzer Hara, Satan, and Malach HaMavet are all on the same side. They're all on the same side. They're on the side that worships HaKadosh Baruch Hu by stopping us, the people of the world, from serving Him. Again, listen to what I said. They worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu by preventing us from His service. Not that they're working against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If anything, this is why the Gemara says, Yetzer Hara, Satan, and Malach HaMavet. What does Malach HaMavet means? The messenger of death. Did he sign a warranty that this is what he's going to do for the rest of his life? No. He was created. Poor Malach HaMavet. You know what? We always think, oh my God. The Christians are the one, the Muslims are the one that make it seem like there's an entity that is beyond God. Chas v'chalila. Everything is from God. If anything, the Malach HaMavet is doing his job correctly. The same thing the Satan and the Yetzer Hara. And the purpose of the Gemara is to tell us that what? By telling us that they're the same thing, just know, they're not fighting against you. The Satan, as Jews we believe there's a spiritual power called the Satan and his powers. This is our belief as Jews. The Satan is not fighting against you. He doesn't care about you. He's a much more abstract being than what you will ever be. The only reason why he deals with you is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him. There's nothing really against you, just like the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. There's nothing against you. When it's time, it's time. Yeah. He's the one who's in charge. They have nothing against you. They're both built to do this by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the first words of every day. That's why we're commanded twice a day, Shacharit and Arvit, to say when we wake up and when we go to sleep. Every single day we're supposed to say Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. After Shema Yisrael we say Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha. You should love Hashem your God. Let's explain it. Bechol levavecha. With all your heart. Now very interesting. It doesn't say Bechol libcha, singular, your heart. It says levavecha, your hearts. Which hearts? Says this the Gemara. It's speaking about two types of hearts, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. You shall love Hashem your God, as we're going to see. This is a beautiful opening to the Shiur that we're about to go into today. You shall love Hashem your God, not just through your Yetzer Tov, not just through when you suddenly are so lighted and you're so enlightened and you just feel inspired. But even with your Yetzer Hara, a Jew's job in this world is to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the Yetzer Hara. With the Yetzer Hara. Today we're going to see an example of one of these things. How can you love HaKadosh Baruch Hu and serve Him with your Yetzer Hara, which again is not really a spiritual force. That's the Satan. Yetzer Hara is the natural inclination and tendency of a human being to not want to do any acts of good. Like tzedakah, I don't want to give from my own money. I just made this. This is my money. Why should they get it? They didn't even work for it. He's just begging on the street. He just comes in the end of Tefillah and asking for tzedakah. Why should I give it to him? I worked hard. Let him find a job. This is what we think. This is what goes on in our mind. Let him find a job. Why do I need to help him? Right? Same thing. Why do I need to go to Tefillah? Let me just say, okay, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not going to lose money for my Tefillah. I have an important meeting with the CEO. I'm not going to lose money for my Tefillah. This is the Yetzer Hara. It's more of it. Then there's the Satan, which is a more spiritual sense of fighting the human being, the human race, to go against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's a different subject. Now, in Parashat Bereshit, so in the book of Genesis, right, the book of Bereshit, Sefer Bereshit, in the last parasha, in chapter 48, Pasuk 22. Says, we all know that this is the parasha of Vayechi. It's the last parasha that ends off the story of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yaakov brings Yosef, and he gives him the final words, the will, his testimony, whatever it is, and he tells him like this. And as for me, I have given you Shechem, the city of Shechem, the land of Shechem, I am giving you, Yosef. One portion more than your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorite, with my sword and with my bow. Says Yaakov, you, Yosef, that is split. You were supposed to be a father. You're supposed to be Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef. But now I'm splitting you into two tribes, your two sons, Menashe and Ephraim. I am giving you one more part in the land of Israel, more than your brothers. Which one? Shechem. The Shechem that I took, that I was able to control and take over and conquer with my sword and my bow, and with my bow. You know, this is Yaakov Avinu speaking. This is our father Yaakov. What does it mean? So they say just straight away, like this. Let's read what Rashi says. Says Rashi, Becharbi u bekashti, Sha'argu, when they killed Shimon and Levi, when Shimon and Levi, the two sons of Yaakov, killed the people of Shechem. Why? Because Chamor ben Shechem, he took Dinah and forced her into being with them, and we know the whole story. So Shimon and Levi come and they literally clear out the entire thing. And what happened was, once Shimon and Levi, just like we see today, once Shimon and Levi retaliated against the attack that was done against them, we don't see this in the written in the writings of the Torah, but we know this from tradition. The entire surrounding area waged war with Yaakov and his nation of 70 people. Remember, Yaakov was only 70 people, and even then not everyone was born. So there was a whole war that we don't read about, but was between the nations of the Amorites and Yaakov. And Yaakov went ahead, he put his sword and bow and arrow, and he fought. Let's look at the translation of Unkelus. Now, Unkelus is on the side of your Chumash. You would see him. Unkelus, right? And his story was that he was Unkelus, the convert. He was a Greek person who, Baruch Hashem, he saw the truth of Judaism. He became a student of Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabbi Eliezer, and all his translation is not his own translation. People make the mistake that he translated the Torah. No, he did not. The translation over here is the translation that was handed down from Moshe all the way to Onkelos, through rabbis. A rabbi to a student. That's why when you do read the Onkelos, you will see that sometimes he doesn't translate. This is one example. Let me show you. Va'ana, and I, Yahavit lach, will give you chulak chad yatir alachich. I'll give you one portion more than your brothers. Till here, sounds pretty clear. Dina sivit, that I took, mida de emora'ah, from the hands of the Amorites, bitzloti, with my prayer, ubeva'oti, and my request from God. With my sword and with my bow, with my arrow. Says Unkelus, no, bitzloti ubeva'oti. Straight away the sages in the Talmud write on this, like this. Becharbi uvekashti, hi chochmati v'tfilati. It was my wisdom and my prayer. Most probably the wisdom that I prayed. The wisdom that I prayed and I requested from God to win the war. Now, if you do read the Midrash, if you do read the tradition, and you see what was the war, there's a whole 3 pages full describing what happened after Shimon and Levi, the two sons of Yaakov, went and attacked Shechem, and they killed everyone. The entire nations all around fought Yaakov and his 12 sons. And when you read it, you get amazed from the amount of miracles that they were able to hold off all the enemy, and not just hold them off, win them. In the entire nation, all the nations around Yaakov were scared. They were just scared. They were awestruck. It goes into detail, and Be'ez Hashem, maybe when we get to that time, we'll go into detail about it. But the only way this could be done, it was supernatural, whatever you read of it. The only way, says Unkelus, Becharbi uvekashti, Yaakov Avinu, you think he will tell Yosef, Yaakov, the holiest of all the avot, of all the patriarchs of our nation, you think he will say to Yosef, this is the land that I was able to conquer, me myself, with my bow and arrow and my sword? Who speaks like this? Esav, not Yaakov. Not Yaakov. Says Unkelus, in the tradition that came all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu, from rabbi to student. I learned from my two rabbis, Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer, that over here, Yaakov Avinu was alluding to a great secret. And he was referring to a prayer and a request. And he was referring to them, one is a sword, the other is a bow and arrow, to teach us for generations about two types of ways of going about the war of what? Of Tefillah, of prayer. This is a beautiful start. And you know, Be'ezrat Hashem, as I said, as I started, we are in a physical war with Iran, with Lebanon, with all the Arab world. We retaliate, and what do we get back? What do we get back? We get the entire nations saying that we upset them and we do the worst of the worst to them, even though all we're doing is just protecting our civilians and our nations. And the same way, Be'ezrat Hashem, that we fight and we learn about the war of Tefillah and we learn about ways to win, so too this should bring a lot of help to Am Yisrael, to the soldiers, to be able to know the ways of how to win also when it comes to the physical war that we have with those enemies of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because anyone who's an enemy of Israel is an enemy of Hashem. Is an enemy of Hashem. This is the beginning. So we learn that Yaakov calls the Tefillah Charbi uvekashti, a sword and a bow. The Zohar HaKadosh, I want to read to you an excerpt from the Zohar HaKadosh. Says the Zohar HaKadosh, Shata de tzalota, the time of prayer, keshata de krava, is like a time of war. Krav. It's like a time of war. He says it's like a parable to a king, and when whoever is winning this war will get the daughter of the king, the princess. Will be able to marry the daughter of the king, the princess. He will be the next king. King over what? Let's explain what is this Zohar HaKadosh telling us? What is Yaakov Avinu telling us over here? The Gemara, the rabbis tell us, the sages tell us in Masechet Berachot, they tell us a very fascinating thing. Tefillot keneged korbanot tiknu. The tefillot were instituted by Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, the people of the Great Assembly, corresponding to korbanot. Now, what is the purpose of a korban? Anyone knows? What is a korban? Sacrifice. What is the purpose of taking an animal, slaughtering it, and offering it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What is the purpose?
Hashem likes it.
Because we want to kill our ego.
Beautiful. Beautiful, exactly. Exactly. There is a very famous dispute. This is one of the fundamentals of Torah. Fundamentals of Torah. The Rambam, Maimonides, and the Ramban, Nachmanides. Now the difference between them, Maimonides passed away around 1210. Okay? 1210. Right now we're in 2024, so he passed away at 1210 in Egypt. Right? Ramban is Nachmanides, was a physician who was born later. He's later than the Rambam, than Maimonides. And his name is Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. Right? Rambam, Maimonides is Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. And Ramban is Rabbi Moshe bar Nachman. And Ramban was a very big follower of the Rambam, but even then, he criticized the Rambam on many things. Many of the works of the Rambam of Maimonides, Nachmanides made sure to write what he disagrees with Maimonides. What he disagrees. Like a student who disagrees with his master. Even though he had a lot of respect. He had a lot of respect, but he said, just know, when I disagree, When I disagree, it's not because I disrespect my rabbi. There was a very famous rabbi called Rabbeinu Peretz. Rabbeinu Peretz, who was also one of the early commentators on the Torah, somewhere around between the 1000 and the 1500. His name was Rabbeinu Peretz, and one time he argued on one of the greatest rabbis. And he says, listen, I am not really allowed to argue on greater rabbis than me by myself, because I'm a midget and they're giants. But I'm a midget who stands on top of a giant. And that's what lets me argue with those before me. Even in our Torah, if a rabbi comes to him a halachic issue and he has to decide, okay, this is what the Gemara says. The Gemara says no, but there's an opinion in the Gemara that says yes. In the later commentaries, there's a yes and a no, and some say yes, no. Now, contemporary halacha, meaning now, says no. Says no. But I have someone great to stand on. In some cases, a rabbi is allowed to stand upon the opinion of another great rabbi to argue on other great rabbis. But from himself, no. From himself, he's not allowed to. But if he stands on top of a giant, he's able to go ahead and, if he, in time of need, to change the halacha, even though the halacha is in a certain way. But only when he has support from great rabbis. Says the Rambam, what's the purpose of korbanot? What's the purpose of having sacrifices? Says the Rambam Maimonides, he says the reason is because the avodah zarah. Back in the day, we weren't allowed to slaughter animals at all. Then we were allowed to slaughter animals when Noach came and Hashem said, please slaughter the animals to me, make sacrifices for me. Why did Hashem do this? Because back in the day, they used to sacrifice animals for the avodah zarah. They believed that was the way. Says Maimonides, by God, by saying to Am Yisrael, sacrifice it for my name, we're eradicating the laws of avodah zarah. Meaning, just like they take their animals and sacrifice it for the sun and the moon, we annul it, we cancel it out by sacrificing to God. This is how the Maimonides wants to understand. Later on he writes, a bit of a twist, he says, the Goyim, they worshipped what? They worshipped the animals of the fields, not the lion. Notice that they didn't worship the lion and all these things. What they worshipped is the cow. Until today we see they worship the cow. Mitzrayim, we know they worshipped what? The lamb. Right? By taking the animals that were very domesticated animals, that they believed were bringing life to the world. They believed that they brought life more than the tiger and the lion, which brought death. They believed in those things, in the domesticated animal, by taking them. And notice, all of our animals that we sacrifice are what? Domesticated animals. It's a cow, it's a bull, but they're not lions. We don't sacrifice horses or giraffes, right? So, right. Says Maimonides, we annul the avodah zarah. So it's like two different reasons that Maimonides says, but again, he focuses and he shifts upon avodah zarah. Says Nachmanides, I disagree. Completely, you got this wrong. This is not why we sacrifice the korbanot. The reason why is because by sacrificing korbanot, we have three parts into the sacrifice in the korbanot. There is machshava, thought, dibur, speech, and ma'aseh, and a doing. The doing, notice the right before a person brings his korban to Bet HaMikdash, Be'ezrat Hashem, we should all merit to bring our korbanot to the third temple. You will see that the halacha is that you have v'samach. The owners of the animal have to make sure that they rely upon the head, meaning you put your hands like this upon the animal's head and you rely upon it, not break its neck. You just put it like this. Okay, there's a certain type of reliance on the animal. Next step, dibur. We speak. What do we speak? Vidui. We say vidui. We confess to God about the sins. Or we confess to God and accept His mercy and thank Him if we bring a todah, korban todah, sacrifice of thanksgiving. right? So we speak and we say thank you. And the last thing is machshava, is thought. What is the thought? The thought is, says the Ramban, we look at this korban, at this animal, and we say that part of gashmiut, of physicality that has been burned, I am giving this to God. I am giving it to my Creator. This is what happens according to the Ramban. It's to eradicate the ego, to eradicate any sense of physicality of yourself as if you are actually existing, because you're not existing. You're not. You're only existing by Him. So in essence, your only existence is not of yourself, it's of Him. But because we're so used to this world and God is so, hidden from us, because of that, we believe that suddenly we exist. So says the Ramban, this is what a korban is. And the same thing applies to tefillah, to prayer. When we pray, it's like, remember what the Gemara says, the prayers were instituted to be like the sacrifices. And just like a person sacrifices and he gives up from his own physicality to God, so too in the tefillah, there is an aspect of giving your physical self to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to Hashem. This is the secret of what the sages mean, that the tefillot are instituted in correspondence to the sacrifice, that we give up from ourselves to God. And now there's two ways to do this. Becharbi uvkashti, with my sword and my arrow. There's two ways that in general, and I'll explain. It was earlier. I'll explain. I'll go back to it. It's a very interesting concept. Basically, there's two ways that we can serve God in this world. So in tefillah specifically, and in avodat Hashem, in the service of God in general. How? There's two ways. One is bechalbi, with a sword. A sword, what does it do? It cuts. It separates. It makes an afrada. We separate the physical from the metaphysical, from the supernatural, from the spiritual. And we enter a state of only spirituality. The physical is here. My spirit is up there. That's becharbi. That's one way of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to eradicate all physical. Like in a ta'anit, like when we do in a fast, in Yom Kippur. We eradicate the complete essence of our physicality and become like what? Like who? The malachim, the angels. That's why we dress white. And that's why we stand the entire day, just like the malachim, the angels. The angels don't have any knees. They don't sit down. They're called omdim, people that are just standing. That's us on Yom Kippur. Then there's a level of bekashti, with my arrow, that I shoot the arrow. And the entirety of the arrow goes somewhere else. I'm shooting somewhere. What is that? That's when I take the entire being that I have, the physical and the spiritual, and I mix them like I mix blue and yellow and create green. And so too I take my physicality and I take my spirituality, and through my physicality I enhance my spirituality. That's bekashti. That's with my arrow. So there's two ways of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One, to separate the physical completely from the spiritual. And another, to mix them together in order to make a beautiful mix in order to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Both of them are true, but both of them are to different levels. Let me tell you one level that happens. What happens? What's the difference? When, let's say, if I go ahead and I do a mitzvah, and the way of doing this mitzvah, now this is a bit deep, but the way of doing the mitzvah is by separating my spiritual from my physical, then what happens after the mitzvah? When my spiritual comes back to my physical aspect is the same as the beginning. Because I never used my physical aspect. I only used my spiritual aspect. I disconnected completely from physicality and went into the upper realms. But when I come back, I come to the same level as I was before when it comes to my physical state. But when I use the other way, which is to mix the spiritual and the physical, then after the mitzvah is being done, my physical, even though my spirituality didn't go that high, because again, the physicality holds it back, it's still enhanced, even if it means a milli of the centimeter or of the inch. So small, but it enhanced, became even better. This is the two-way we approach tefillah. There's becharbi, with my sword cutting off completely, and bekashti, and with my arrow. The entirety of the arrow goes up, and then it goes down. It comes back down. It's the same as when it went up and it went down. And when it hits down. It hits down. There's no separation. It's the same that was up is the same that went down. It's just different states. That's becharbi uvkashti. Now, the way Rosh Hashana, right now we're approaching Rosh Hashana. The way to approach the prayer of Rosh Hashana, first of all, we know that tomorrow we don't blow the shofar. Do you know this? Tomorrow we don't blow the shofar. Even though every day after the tefillah we blew the shofar, tomorrow we don't blow the shofar. We don't want to have the Satan already. Remember, the purpose of blowing the shofar is for the Satan, is to very secret stuff. Very, 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 very Kabbalistic deep things. We don't blow the shofar. We pray. We don't even say vidui tomorrow. We don't even do this tomorrow. Even though it's Erev Rosh Hashana, Rosh Hashana Eve. Why don't we do this? Why? Many people think that Rosh Hashana is a time that what do? Ashamnu, bagadnu, and they start crying, and they start telling God how much they sin, and how much they want protection, and how much they need protection for this year, and how much parnasa they want, and how much ahava they want, how much love they want, and how much shalom they want in the world. Anyone who prays for all these things on Rosh Hashanah is missing the point. Is missing the point of Rosh Hashanah. You can pray. And of course, you should pray for these things. But you're missing the point. If you open, I have a machzor over here of Rosh Hashanah. If you open for the first prayer of Rosh Hashanah, which is Arvit. Every prayer starts every day. What's the first prayer of the day? Arvit. It's not Shacharit, it's Arvit. Because the day starts, the Jewish day starts from the night. If you open it, yes, it says this year is over. But it never once says, in this entire thing, it says, please remember us for life. It says, please remember us for life, great God, because you're the King of life. But it never once says, God, forgive us. God, have mercy on us. It says, make us holy. Give us a part in your Torah. Become the greatest of all. One who is being, when uttered, people fear. Be the one that everyone sees as king. It is wrong to think that Rosh Hashanah, it is completely wrong to think that Rosh Hashanah is a day of praying for your sins. This is not the day, this is not the time, this is not the place. Chas v'chalila, you shouldn't do this on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, for a reason, in Ezra, in the book of Ezra, says Ezra to Am Yisrael, he tells them, Lechu ichlu lachmechem besimcha, go and eat and be merry and be happy. It's a happy day for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not a day of sadness. It's not a day of sadness. What happened on Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah, Hayom Harat Olam. Today the world was created. That's not true. There's two opinions of when the world was created. One is Chafhei Adar, 25th of Adar. And the other one is Chafhei Be'elul, on the 25th of Elul. So how can it be that we say in our Tefillah, Hayom Harat Olam, today was the day of the creation? Because today, the entire purpose of the creation was complete. the creation of Adam and Chava. That was that day of Rosh Hashana. The rabbis tell us in beautiful short words, they say the following words, En melech belo am. There is no king without a nation. You can't. You can call yourself king however much you want, but if you don't have any followers, if you don't have anyone who agreed to have you as their king, and remember, we said this last time, melech means someone, it's from the root word of malach, nimlach, which means, as we know in the halachot of Shalom Bayit, when it comes to Shalom Bayit, it says that before a woman leaves the house, or a man leaves the house, or before a man starts the business deal, that means great things for his house. Great deal it means. Or a woman strikes a deal, or she goes to work, or he goes to work, or they sign a contract. They have to always consult with their spouse. One of the greatest things that the Gemara tells us. Anytime before a husband goes or a wife goes to a business or somewhere, they have to make sure to consult with each other before. Hey, I'm doing this. It comes from that's the word melech. To translate it as king is sometimes wrong. Why? Even though it does mean king, it's wrong because we know kings that became kings because they were tyrants. That's called a moshel. Kadosh Baruch Hu is a king because we chose him as our king. The purpose of Rosh Hashana is not to cry to Kadosh Baruch Hu about your parnasa. And the Ari Kadosh says you should cry, b'chas v'chalila, not cry of sadness. You should cry because your entire being, your gashmiut, your physicality is mixed beautifully with your spirituality. Bekashti, with my arrow, not becharbi. This is not a time to separate your essence of physicality away from your essence of spirituality. This is not. That's Yom Kippur. Leave it for that time. On Rosh Hashanah, what we do is we mix the spiritual and the physical, and we reach a point, says the Arizal, that you cry because you're so in love with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in love with what He does to you, in love with what He has given you from the time you were born till now, and you accept Him as your King. Those are the tears that should come out. The Ari HaKadosh says these are the tears that a person should try and reach. Not the ones, God, look what happened this year in Simchat Torah. Look what happened this. Because once we accept God as King, in these prayers, we have more kavanah of the prayers that God should become King of the world. None of these things will happen. All of this happens because of the darkness that we live in. All of this happened because of kitavo. Remember what we learned in the last week parasha of all the kelalot. We spoke about this on Shabbat. Why did they come? Because you did not worship Hashem, your God, besimcha uvetuv levav, because of happiness. This is not a time to be sad. This is not Tisha B'Av. This is Rosh Hashana, the beginning of the year. In Rosh Hashana, every single one of us is obligated, from the beginning of the Tefillah till the end, to remember the words Hashem Elech, Hashem Alach, Hashem Imloch L'olam V'Olam. This is the kavanah that you need. More than this is redundant. You don't need any Shemot Kedoshim. You don't need any this. If you can manage from the beginning of the Tefillah to the end, and especially by the silent Amidah, which I suggest every single one of us right now, that we should accept on ourselves, that this is our main focus, to remember that what I'm praying for is not for myself. It's for God to become King and be recognized by the entire world. Because when Abba wins the court case, then we're famous. When Abba wins the court case, no one dares touch his child. No one dares touch us. Because they know we have Abba. The only reason why they touch us is because they don't know that he is Abba. Look, the Christians say Abba separated. Abba left. The Muslims say Abba left you guys. You guys are not his anymore. David HaMelech taught us, even when a person has a sword by his neck, alimna et atzmo min harachamim. Never prevent yourself from asking God to mercy. You're never too beyond. You're never too away. He's here for us. Bezrat Hashem, we should have an amazing year, a year full of light. Tachel Shana u'birchotea. The year, tomorrow we're going to say, tomorrow night, I suggest everyone to go to Tefillah and say the following words. Tichle Shana v'kilelotea. The year and all of its curses shall finish. V'tachel Shana u'birchotea. It shall become a new year in all of its blessings. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should be able to have kavanah, as though it's a fight, we should be able to have kavanah and make sure that both our physical and our spiritual will come in the beautiful mix to accept HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the Melech, as the King, and to truly appreciate Him. And as we say, as we started the Shiur, Ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, and you should love Hashem your God, Bechol levavecha, with both of your hearts, Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Hatov. Hazak u'baruch, Shana Tova.